Oh, here's an answer. Robin Calloway Welch with the last question tonight says, I know you're already burning the candle at both ends. I'm actually burning the candle at three ends, which is harder than it appears. But is there any news or progress in funding on Big Bat Problems, Aurora, and CSR? Big Bat Problems, Aurora, and CSR are three movies that I've got developed that I'm just ready to go, and I want to do them so badly. And the problem is, it's very hard to get you. I don't want to say you can't get there from here, but it's extremely difficult. I was trying to do both things at the same time, and I realized, no, I just not doing any good. Foghorn's already flown MiG 21, Su 22, 25, MiG 23, and L 39. Well, I've flown an L 39, so there you go. We're pretty much even. I think it's any reasonable judge of aviation skill would say that. I think certainly. So anyway, I got these movies ready to go, and I am utterly convinced that if I could give the movies my full attention, then they would be smashing successes. And it's what I want to do, you know? It's what I've always wanted to do. And I would be very, very good at that. And I just have to tell some of these stories. I just have to do it. The problem is, how do you leave here, you know? I wouldn't ever drop the political stuff completely, but if you're going to have... if you're going to get into that level of work, you're going to be seeing an awful lot less of me. And if you see an awful lot less of me, then we lose members. And if we lose members, then we can't run the shop. So making the transition is very, very hard. But I am really, really determined to do it someday. I was talking with Natasha the other day, a couple days ago. I really thought about just jumping, you know. Everything good that's ever happened to me has come as a result of a leap, including my fiance. Are you going to do this? Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, absolutely, I'm going to do this, yeah. It takes a leap, and I suspect that this is probably true, Robin, that the only way for me to get there is to reach a point when I just say, I am now going to burn my bridges behind me and burn my boats behind me and all the rest of it. That focuses the mind. I'm pretty sure it was William the Conqueror and maybe a couple of other people. Alexander the Great may have done it as well. But when you sail on an invasion to another country, and the first thing you do when you get ashore is you burn your boats, you're committed now. You're going to give everything you got, because there is no retreat and there is no escape. And I suspect that's what it's going to take, is for me just to look at the situation and say, whatever the financial situation is or whatever, if I don't do it now, it's not going to get done. With that said, I am so excited about them. I want to do them so much. I want to do them so much. They're just, I just gonna have to blow my own horn here. Big Bat Problems is one I've been working on many times, and they're just clever. You know, it's the only word I can have for it. And I know it's a obnoxious thing to say, but so many movies are just, especially horror movies or science fiction movies, they're so beautiful and they're covering such an incredibly great topic, and then they just do things that are just so stupid that you're just out of the movie. And anytime I ran into anything like that, I just said, no, I can't do this. I can't do it. And I put so much interesting stuff in there. We call these little pieces of things that don't really have anything to do with the plot directly, we call that chrome. And something that's got a lot of chrome is a good script, science fiction script or horror script. And there's so much chrome in this story. Every little thing, I think. Since I'm on this trail, I might as well just finish it. Every single thing in that movie is clever. I've given it a great deal of thought, and nothing in there is lazy. Even at the very, very end of the movie, we meet a character at the beginning of Act 3, which means they're on screen for maybe 15, 16 minutes. And just to give you an idea of where my little brain is thinking about this, I've got these aliens that have converted people into warriors. They look a bit like giant bats. And as we get closer and closer and closer to where their hive is, where the big climactic big fight is, they meet a person who's been living next to them for years and has managed to survive. Now, she's barking mad, but she's done it. And these creatures are echolocators, which means they use sonar. And so I had to think about, how would I camouflage myself if I wanted to go out in the middle of creatures that don't have eyesight and use only sound? How would I do it? And I came up with something that looks like a foam suit, you know, the acoustic tiles you put on a recording studio that just kill sound. It was basically a suit made out of those, but the part I really liked about it was not symmetrical. It would have like a gigantic part of it jutting out, you know, for like 2 or 3 feet from your neck, and one arm would be kept very small and so on. And the reason I was so proud of that is because everything I've ever seen that is biological is symmetrical. And if you had an object that was not symmetrical, unless you were very, very smart, you would think that this could not possibly be biological. So, camouflage as it exists now is not designed to absorb light. It's designed to make sure that you match the background that you're against. By the way, since this is what this whole show's all about meandering departures from the main theme, here's what's interesting about camouflage. Camouflage works for the same reason that you have a flashing light on a jet in the sky, that aircraft identification lights are flashing. It's the same principle as camouflage. And it works because of the way our eyes work and the way our brains process vision. Basically, vision is so processor intensive. It takes up so much of your brain cycles. Decoding vision is so difficult and takes so much brain power that what the human brain does is it does compression. It compresses things. And there are 2 great examples of this. One of them is, if you look around the room, and we've all been looking around all the time, and you just look around, if you just glance around and look at other things in your room and so on, just do that for a second or 2, and then you'll realize that you're focused on one thing, and then you're focused on something else, but you don't see the blur of your eyes moving from one to another. Your eyes actually have to leave here, and they have to travel over there. Doesn't take very long, but that movement from one place to another is not recorded. You're not aware of it. You never see it. Here's a shocker for you. A real shocker, a major shocker for you. You can see your own nose, right? I mean, there it is. Unless you're, Heather Locklear or something, you can see your own nose. Your nose is in your field of vision all the time, and now that I've told you about it, you're aware of it. But your brain filters that out. It just simply doesn't see it. It just processes it out. It's like a noise reduction system. You can see your nose every second of your life that you've been looking around at things. Your nose has been in the picture and you've never seen it before, right? Until I pointed it out to you. So those kind of things are really interesting to me. And the way that camouflage works is very simple. When you look out at something like a field, let's say, your brain takes a snapshot of that field and stores it. And if nothing moves, then it will keep that same snapshot. I know that sounds very strange, but it's absolutely true. You glance out at a field and your brain processes a quick look at all the details and all the foliage and all the rest of it, and it saves it as a still. And it will not update that until either you move position or something out there moves. In other words, it's not going to change it until you need to see something different. So it's saving brain cycles by basically compressing the data and putting up these kind of artificial things. So camouflage works because if you're not moving, this initial scan of terrain is just a snapshot. And if you don't move, you will continue to use that frozen image of the background, and you simply will not see people. Now, really good camouflage, like ghillie suit sniper camouflage, you can basically stare right at that person and not see anything. I'm talking about something a little more general than that. It works because your brain does these compressions. And the reason that we have a flashing light on airplane lights in the sky is because a flashing light is changing, needless to say, it's changing its status. So a steady light, your brain just says, light over there. And that's it. But a blinking light, is just constantly resetting that optical system. It's constantly saying, "Oh crap, it's bright now. Oh shoot, now it's dark. Now it's bright again. Now it's dark again." It's just and there it is. Now somebody just said this really interesting. At 608 said, "Why don't you crowdfund your movies?" And I am giving it a great deal of temptation. I don't know if I could get there. I don't know if I could get there. Every time I think I can go out and raise money from memberships or crowdsourcing or something, I got these big ambitious dreams, and it just doesn't pan out. I do have some connections to some people. I would love to try to crowdsource it. I would love to, and that may be my fallback position. The question is, am I well known enough to get to to get to $1.5 million? That's a big number from people, but you never know. So thank you for reminding me about the crowdsourcing thing. So anyway, that's how camouflage works. And so I just thought if I was going to go, if this is why I like the movie Big Bad Problems and all the movies that I do. I like them because I think about if you were in a situation and you did have time to think about it, what would you do? And when I say that so many movies are lazy and stupid, I mean, how many times have you seen this? How many times have you seen a horror movie where the audience has already seen the monster, right? We know it's Freddy Krueger, we know it's Jason, we've seen the monster work, we know how it works. And the monster's in the basement, and the house is dark and deserted, and the only person in the house is a 18-year-old girl wearing a T-shirt. And there's a sound downstairs. And instead of doing the one thing that everybody would do, which is just get out of that house and run like hell, she picks up a butcher's knife, there's always one of those handy, and she looks into the basement. She says, "Is anybody down there? Hello?" And she starts walking down into the basement where the monster is. I see things like this, and I'm done. I'm out. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. And so, for me, making a great movie script about something. Look, you can do a relationship piece about, the coming of age and, gay man comes of age on the streets of San Francisco. That's fine. You don't have a whole lot of serious problem solving to do in that. That's all about emotion and personal relationships. But if you've got a situation where you're putting characters against an adversary and you've got to outthink them, then you have to really look at everything you do and make sure there are never any of those "oh, come on" moments. She's going back for the cat? Really? She's seen what this alien does? She's going back for the cat? Come on. I'm not so sure. Especially since it's not her cat. It's a ship's cat. So I just think about these things, and I needed somebody who was invisible to these creatures for the big final fight. And I thought, if I was going to make an invisibility suit for a creature that used echolocation, what would it look like? And I came up with, it would be sound absorbent foam, which means that their pings would just basically continue. As far as they were concerned, there'd be no echo. It would just be a dark spot there. And even though the dark spot was there, you'd have an outline of the dark spot. But if the outline of the dark spot was noticeably asymmetrical, it would take an awful lot of processing power to assume that that's a biological creature, because these creatures are not terribly smart. They're warrior type insects. So that's the kind of thing I really miss, and that's the kind of thing I really would like to show off doing, is just making a movie where everything is so well thought out and it's just clever. You see movie moments that are clever. It's just clever. It's a great word. The Europeans often use that word for intelligence. He's very smart. They'll say he's very clever. But clever to me is clever is like a construction. It's like clever is almost like engineering as opposed to intelligence. Clever is the ability to put things together in a weird sort of way that works. So there's just an awful lot of clever in that movie, and you don't see a lot of clever, and I really, really, really want to do it. So, I may look into the crowdsourcing thing. The one nice thing about crowdsourcing is, if you want to consider me famous, then you get pretty low standards of what fame is, but I'm more known than I used to be, let's put it that way. Would I be willing to hand over the project to someone else? No, I would not. I'm sorry, T-Dog. Absolutely not. This is the surest path to insanity. When you talk about doing the kind of work I'm doing mentally on these scripts, I have finished the movie, and I've seen the movie 40 times. It's a finished film, and I've seen it 40 times. Patrick and David win the bingo, and I don't know what I committed myself to doing, but whatever it is, Patrick and David will be sending you your prize shortly, and Cheryl will keep me honest about that. Now, when you've seen a movie in your head 40 times, and you've lived with it, and you've put every little piece of chrome in there, and you've beaten it out and restructured things, and just every time you tell it, it's a little bit better. You can't just turn that over to somebody. You just can't do it. You're going to be disappointed enough when you get to the set because everything's perfect in your head until you shoot it. So the downside of making movies is, as a writer-director, the downside is you have an image in your head which is perfect, and when you get out to the field, nothing's perfect. That's the negative. But the positive is, when you're dealing with creative people, good actors, good lighting people, good sound, whatever, when you're dealing with creative people, they will surprise you with things that you hadn't thought of. They will come up with things that you simply hadn't thought of that are far better than either what you had or was just some area that wasn't filled in, and a good actor will have some piece of business or something. And when you're working with people like that, then the director's job is essentially to be a filter. Like, should I let this brilliant idea go through? Does it help the story? Yes or no? If not, it's wonderful, but can't do it. If so, yes, absolutely. And so on and so on and so on. In any event, look at that. It's just about 2 hours, almost exactly. So I think we're going to call it a night here for 149 episodes of the Stratosphere Lounge. And I know there's a lost episode out there somewhere too. As always, this show is made possible by the paying members at BillWhittle.com. If you're watching on YouTube and you're not one of those paying members, I'm not going to ask you to do it. I usually do, but I'm not going to this time. I will say, just if you could just hit the subscribe button, that would make a lot of difference to us. We're actually getting to the point where you can actually start to see trickles of revenue from some of the numbers that we're doing. So if you want to subscribe and like us on Facebook, if you haven't done those yet, it would mean a lot to me. You don't even need to give an email, just have to push a button, and that's all there is to it. So that'll do it. I guess I always have a hard time kind of just wrapping up the show, so I'm just going to wrap up the show. I'm going to tee up the little file that says TSL Silent, and to put that in the preview window, and then I'm going to switch it to the live window, and